Welcome, everyone. Ready for a deep dive into some pretty out there stuff?
Oh, yeah. We're going deep on Archons today.
Buckle up. We're looking at this interview between Rick Kuitems and Peter Toonen from the LNN YouTube channel. And
Tuna's got some strong opinions about how these Archons are, influencing our world.
yeah, it's pretty wild. So, for those who aren't familiar, what exactly are these archons that Toonen keeps talking about?
So Tunan's basing this on ancient Gnostic texts like the Nag Hammadi scriptures and stuff.
Right, and I've heard of those, but I don't really know the details.
Well, according to Tunan, the Gnostics believed Archons are these powerful entities, but not physical beings like you and me.
More like forces or what?
Yeah, forces. They're these controlling, manipulative forces that are all about, like, keeping humanity under their thumb. And Toonen thinks they're almost like parasitic.
Parasitic.
Yeah, like they feed off of negative human emotions, all that fear, anger, you name it.
So basically, they're like energy vampires, but not the kind that sparkle.
Exactly. The thing is, Toonen says they need this energy because they can't create anything themselves. The Gnostics believed they were like the product of this flawed creation.
Flawed creation.
Yeah. It all comes from this being, they call it the demiurge. And he's like kind of a lesser god, not the ultimate good guy.
Right. So he's not the source of all that's good in the world.
Right. And he's this guy that wants to keep our souls trapped in, like, the material world.
Wow. That's a whole different take on creation, isn't it?
Totally. And the idea that they can only manipulate what already exists is important to how Toonen thinks they're operating in the world. Like they distort and twist things that are already there,
So they're like cosmic plagiarists, basically, ripping off good stuff and twisting it.
That's a good way to put it.
I remember Toonen even describes the, head honcho Archon, this Yaldabaoth character,
Oh, yeah.
as this reptilian being with a lion head.
Pretty wild imagery.
Seriously, talk about intent.
Yeah, the Gnostics definitely knew how to paint a picture. Makes you think about why they chose those specific images, what they were trying to get across.
It's definitely thought-provoking.
It is?
But getting back to Toonen, his thoughts on how these archons are actually messing with our world today are, well, pretty mind-blowing.
Oh, yeah. He suggests they might even be behind things like the COVID-19 pandemic, like using all that fear and control to their advantage.
It's a pretty bold claim.
Yeah, and he goes even further, saying it could be like in the movie The Matrix.
Like you're in a simulation.
Yeah, potentially controlled by these archons. It's definitely gets you thinking.
He seems pretty wary of things like vaccines and gene therapy, too.
Yeah, his concern is that those things could be used to, like, suppress our true nature and disconnect us from our hearts and intuition.
It's a pretty serious concern.
Yeah, it definitely raises some questions, even if you don't totally agree with his conclusions.
Okay, so let's say, for the sake of argument, that Toonen's right. If these archons are pulling strings from behind the scenes, what can we even do about it?
Well, that's where his ideas about alternative systems come in. He talks about this urine currency in the Happy Bank.
A what?
Urine currency, it's based on ours. They're all about creating systems that, empower people and aren't controlled by the usual suspects.
So it's like creating a whole different structure, operating outside the systems that he thinks are, compromised by the archons.
Exactly. He calls it building a parallel society.
A parallel society. Interesting.
Yeah, people living in harmony with nature and with each other, free from all that control.
So it's like a utopia, but one that exists alongside our current world.
Yeah, pretty much. He's a big believer in empowering individuals and making a more just and sustainable world.
This idea of a parallel society is pretty fascinating. And then he even talks about getting back in sync with natural time. How does that fit into all of this?
Well, Toonen believes that the regular calendar, the Gregorian one we all use, is actually like a tool of control too.
Our calendar. Seriously.
He thinks all those irregular months and that random starting point, they disconnect us from the natural cycles, making us easier to manipulate.
So instead of going with the flow of the seasons and moon cycles, we're trapped in this rigid, fake time structure.
That's his thinking. He proposes this alternative, a 13-moon calendar. It follows the lunar cycles, always starts on a specific moon phase, and it even has a special day at a time.
A whole day. What do you do on a day out of time?
It's meant to be a break from all those artificial time constructs and a chance to get back in touch with the universe's rhythms.
It's wild how he connects all this stuff. Ancient Gnostic texts, worries about tech today, and even something as basic as a calendar.
Yeah, it paints a pretty complex picture. Even if you don't agree with everything Toonen says, there's no denying he makes you think about reality, the forces at play, and the choices we make in our lives and the world. So last time we were talking about how Toonen thinks we can tap into like the power of our hearts to resist those Archon influences.
Right, but how do we actually, do that? What does that even look like in real life?
Well, Toonen talks about this heart-centered awareness. It's like a way to actually feel when something's not right.
You mean like a gut feeling?
Yeah, kind of. But he says it's more than just, your emotions going crazy. It's like a deeper kind of knowing coming from this like wise place, like we're connected to something bigger.
I think we've all had that experience where you just get a bad vibe from someone or a situation, even if you can't explain why.
Exactly. And Tunen's saying, don't ignore those feelings.
Pay attention to those red flags.
Right. And it's like a muscle,
Yeah.
The more we use it, the stronger it gets. The more we pay attention to our intuition, the more we can learn to trust it.
So how do we actually work that muscle? Strengthen our intuition.
He suggests a few things. Meditation's a big one.
Right, meditation. Makes sense.
Quieting the mind, being more present, all that. It helps those little whispers of intuition get louder.
Yeah, I get that.
He also says spending time in nature helps. Getting back in touch with those natural rhythms. It can really ground you, make you feel more centered.
It's true. When you're constantly bombarded with information and technology, it's so easy to lose touch with that inner voice.
And that's exactly what makes us more susceptible to manipulation, Toonen says. We start relying on outside sources to tell us what's true, what's not, instead of trusting ourselves.
Okay, so how does this whole heart-centered awareness thing connect to what he was saying about technology? All that stuff about gene therapy.
Well, his worry is that some tech could actually mess with or even override our natural heart intelligence.
So it's not that he's anti-technology. It's about, being careful and understanding how tech could affect us deep down.
Right. He wants us to think bigger. Are we actually making ourselves better or are we losing something important?
Right. That makes sense. Okay, so we've got these Archons, we've got heart intelligence. How does that lead to his ideas about creating different systems, that whole parallel society thing?
He sees our current systems, like financial systems, political systems, even the calendar, as being influenced by these archonic forces. It's all designed to keep us scared, dependent, and controlled.
So he's not saying overthrow the government, but more like create something different alongside it.
Exactly. It's more of a grassroots approach. He's talking about building communities based on, cooperation, sharing, connection to nature.
Like that urine currency he mentioned.
Right. Imagine a currency that's not controlled by, banks or governments, but by the people who actually use it. A currency that encourages people to work together and, take care of the planet.
Yeah, that's a cool idea. What about the Happy Bank?
Oh, the Happy Bank isn't really a bank. It's more of a platform that connects people with projects and ideas that are doing good in the world.
So instead of investing in corporations, you're investing in things that align with your values.
Exactly. Shifting our energy and resources to things that actually benefit people and the planet.
Definitely a different way to think about money. And then there's that calendar thing. How does that fit in?
Well, he sees our regular calendar as part of this whole web of control. It disconnects us from those natural cycles and keeps us locked into this rigid way of thinking about time.
Instead of going with the flow of nature, we're stuck in this grid of days, weeks, months.
That's the idea. And Toonen thinks it makes us way more vulnerable to manipulation, being out of sync with nature and with our own internal rhythms.
And his solution is that 13-moon calendar.
Yep. He sees it as a way to reconnect with the cycles, get more in tune with the flow of energy, and tap into that deeper wisdom and intuition.
So how does it actually work, this 13-moon calendar?
Each of the 13 moons has 28 days, and they always start on a specific moon phase. It's supposed to be a more balanced way of measuring time, reflecting the natural cycles of, the moon and the earth.
And you mentioned that day out of time thing before.
Oh, yeah. The day out of time falls between the last day of the 13th moon and the first day of the new year.
So kind of like a bonus day.
It's a day for being creative, connecting with yourself, setting your intentions for the new year.
Sounds like a global reset button.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It reminds you that time isn't just this straight line. It's a circle, a flow of energy, and we can get in sync with that flow.
Toonen's got some wild ideas, connecting all this ancient stuff with our worries about today's world.
It's definitely a mind trip. Whether or not you believe all of it, he makes you think, and that's a good thing, right?
So we've covered a lot of ground with Toonen's ideas. Archons, heart intelligence, alternative systems, that 13-moon calendar.
It's a lot to process for sure.
But something that really struck me was how Toonen talks about us, maybe accidentally feeding these archons through all our negative emotions.
Yeah, that's kind of a freaky thought.
It is, right. But it also makes me more aware of how I'm feeling, and what I do when I get triggered or stressed out.
It's like he's saying we're not only responsible for how we feel,
Yeah.
but also for the energy we put out there.
Right, like our negativity doesn't just affect us, it can spread.
Exactly. And that's where that heart-centered awareness thing comes in. It's like a way to vibe check people and situations, not just with your head, but with your gut.
Yeah.
And he connects it to all these ancient traditions, but also to things some people might call like psychic, like knowing someone's intentions before they even open their mouth.
That's pretty wild.
Right. Makes you wonder, like, what are we capable of?
Toonen doesn't think it's some special gift, though, right?
No, he thinks anyone can develop it through meditation, being in nature, even just like paying attention to those little gut feelings we usually ignore.
It's like we've forgotten how to trust our own inner compass.
Yeah, exactly.
And, when he talks about gene therapy and stuff, it makes sense now. He wants to protect that natural connection to our hearts.
It's about preserving that inner wisdom.
The stuff that makes us human.
Right. And whether or not you agree with his views on specific tech, it does make you think, like, how much do we really want to hand over our inner knowing to machines?
Right.
At what point does, making ourselves better become losing ourselves?
It's a deep question.
Yeah.
But Toonen's not just about warnings. He's also got ideas for solutions.
Yeah. He talks about the urine currency and the happy bank, right?
Yeah. All those new systems that are about empowering people, giving them more control.
Like he's saying, look, the system's messed up, but we're not helpless. We can create something better.
I love that.
Me too.
And that thing about the calendar, getting back in sync with natural time, that really speaks to me.
Yeah. It's about breaking free from that artificial time grid and getting back to the rhythms of the earth.
It's like remembering our ancient connection to nature.
Exactly.
He even brings up UFOs and free energy, like stuff that sounds totally out there.
Yeah.
But he thinks these technologies might be real and that they're being hidden because they, threaten the people in power.
It's definitely a controversial idea.
For sure. But I think it fits with his overall message of questioning what we've been told and being open to new possibilities.
Yeah, like he's saying, don't be afraid to look beyond what they're showing you. There might be a whole lot more out there.
Toonen's interview is definitely a trip.
Yeah.
But the biggest thing I take away is that it's a message of hope.
Yeah. He's basically saying that no matter how messed up things seem, we have the power to make them better.
Yeah.
We can create a world that's more in tune with our hearts, with our souls, with nature.
It's about remembering that we're not victims, we're creators, we can change things.
So what will you do differently after listening to Toonen? Will you pay more attention to your intuition, look into those alternative systems, or just try to find more joy in your life?
Whatever it is, let it be something that, wakes you up a bit.
Reminds you that you're not alone and that there's so much good out there,
Yes.
so much possibility.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the world of Archons. Let us know what you think about Toonen's ideas. What questions do you have?
Until next time, keep exploring.